Hello and welcome to the Collective Awakening podcast. Myself and Stephen, we've returned and it's a new era for us really today. And we're beginning with a really interesting subject and title, Stephen, which is
about living the work, dedication, balance and spiritual path. So this is a really passionate subject of ours, something that's come to the forefront quite a bit over the past year as we run the Health and Wellbeing Centre, the Purple Mountain. And with that comes the territory of facing a lot of challenges, which I'm hoping those that listen to the podcast will resonate with, both from a healer's perspective, someone that holds space, and also from a client's perspective, because we're both client and healer, because we go out there and we have healing treatments and we go out and have readings outside of the Purple Mountain. But I think what would be really good to start off the subject is to talk a little bit about dedication and how we got involved in the work. So how was dedication important to us?
And I think it's really important as we begin this conversation that in this sort of new era, what we want to call it, of our podcast, that there's so many podcasts out there telling people how they should be or what they should do. And what we want to do is share our experiences, have real conversations about real matters that are at the heart of things now, in hope that it will resonate and perhaps you'll feel if the information will make sense to you, what your experience at this moment in time. So
and I think when we share things like that, it shows our vulnerability, and it really brings people, the community, together and say, well, I understand that, I'm going through that as well. And it would just give you give us all a little bit of better understanding, really. So
do you want me to start?
Yeah, please.
So we're on about the beginning of spiritual journey.
Your dedication. Why was dedication important to you?
It's interesting because many a time we have this conversation where at the time in our life when this work found us or we found it, whichever way, and we were invited into a home circle, probably one of the most, don't know if I want to say chaotic, but certainly full on times of our life. We were both quite young and interested in other matters at the time. But this is where I feel when you trace back, things should just be natural. There are things that we shouldn't need to be told. There should be a natural flow. So what happened was the circle we were in was every Sunday night. And I remember being asked, can you commit to every Sunday night?
And you said that to Roy.
It was Roy and Anita who ran the circle. And even in my life at that time, when I had a lot of other commitments, I remember actually sitting and thinking and taking that very seriously. Can I commit? And very quickly what happened in a short space of time is that a lot of the things that were of interest to me at the time sort of fell to the wayside. And I was more and more drawn into practice, really, and in interest in finding, people use the term finding home, but I actually want to say it's more like finding like-minded people. So you feel feelings you felt your entire life. I'm sure many people listening would have felt that as well, where they felt, I don't quite fit in. My thoughts aren't the same as everyone else's, things like that. And then you get amongst like-minded people and you have that, you could call it an awakening moment where it's something's mind-blowing, isn't it? But I find from there, naturally, your life changes very quickly. And your priorities change. Your conscious kicks in, things that might not have bothered you so much. You might have told somebody where to go and just not thought about it.
Start questioning things.
You start questioning things. You start looking at your behaviours. And something I mentioned, because I don't want to go into the full story, that would be a podcast, there are things always progress and move forward. But there are some core teachings that I received in that circle that still stand today. And one of the big ones is personal responsibility. You are responsible. You choose. And you know what? By taking self-responsibility, we're just talking the spiritual path at the minute, it is extremely helpful.
Oh, absolutely. And I just want to touch upon what you said before about forcing things. And I've seen a lot of this, particular in the spiritual movement, in the mediumistic movement. And only from my personal experience, when we joined a home circle, we had no expectation. We would just sat there each week, meditated. We sat for trance for our sister Nita, and we sat there and we witnessed that and we asked questions, we were curious. I don't know about you, Chris, but I never thought, oh, I want to be this, I want to be that. I just learned ultimately just to be a sitter.
100%.
Just learning to be a sitter. And I think this is such an important message for people that do have a desire or pull to develop in some ways. And that's something that I feel really passionate about because it was so helpful for me, is just sit. Learn just to sit, be with yourself. Like you said, be around like-minded people. Have those conversations. Have no expectation. And I know ambition is good. We all have to have some ambition. But I think the first step of any kind of development is learn just to be, sit in that meditation, turn up each week.
Yeah.
I mean, and I want to ask you about, what were some of the challenges you faced between your physical life in the early days? Well, did you face those challenges? Did you give up?
Well, that's the other side of things, isn't it? Where we've talked about it a few times recently. When you open that door, you're in an agreement, aren't you? You open that door to deeper understanding, deeper knowing, not just about the world or the spirit world, but yourself. Mm-hmm. So you're going to open some uncomfortable doors.
Yeah.
So they'll bring lessons. For example, there might be that person who rings you every time you've got circle, or there might be an invitation every time you've got circle. And I don't like to use the word test, but in a way it kind of is.
Yeah.
But the test is set by yourself. The saying, are you going to be distracted, or are you going to concentrate on where you are? I mean, I just want to pick up what you said there, because I actually find it fundamental and it's something when I was recently reading a Dolores Cannon book, and what struck me is how curious she was. And I think curiosity is one of the main keys. Never lose your curiosity in anything, because it's curiosity that brought me into this work. It's at the beginning, but yeah, those obstacles will come, and really, you've got to be strong.
Oh,
it's simple as that. You have to be strong, because it's easy to say yes to anything. It's easy to try and keep everybody happy, but actually saying no, it takes strength to have boundaries. And say, this is my time. It's once a week. I'm going to this place. I want to go. I find it very nourishing. And you will find there's those challenges. Even, there is different types of energies out there. And there are certain energies that don't want you going to circle, that you might get that family member, that friend who's a bit wild, or stuff going on in their life, knocking on your door, ringing. But I want to be really clear about this, that it's not one-sided here. It's that they are playing a role. They're actually testing your mettle. They're saying, look, are you going to be able to stick this out?
It comes down to dedication again, doesn't it?
And the other one is if you're not feeling too well as well. And really, unless it's something physically that's going to disrupt you, you'll get the healing, you'll feel better.
And that's my big thing. And, just moving the conversation a little bit to people that, like ourselves, that run circles, run healing classes, which we've done for over 15 years now. I mean, we've been involved in the circle for over 25 years, and the circle's been running for over 40 years. Like you said, talking from my personal experience, I used to, every single week, have my mum ring me an hour before going to circle and trying to unload all this stuff, until I had to make that decision to say, I'm not picking that phone up. People used to ask me, can you do this on a Wednesday? And you have to be strong, and you have to say, no, that is my evening. And this is where I think can be very frustrating for people that run circle classes, is to say, well, I've got things going off. Well, you can't have your cake and eat it. You have to have that balance between your physical life and your spiritual life, which I think is all in one. But you're going to get distracted. And, in the early days, my partner didn't understand that kind of commitment that I had, going to circle each Wednesday evening, each Sunday evening. Or can we not go out for a meal? Can we not do this? No. And I have to say, even in those early days, I was very strong. And I think you were very strong to say no. I mean, we had each other to say, that is our commitment. That's what we're doing. Because quite easily, I say to you all the time, sometimes I feel like, I can't be bothered getting out of bed. I want to miss. But I pour myself through it and I turn up.
But does it just show that it's nobody had to tell you?
I learned that myself.
And things should be natural things. And what I find is forgotten sometimes, with individuals who, for whatever reason, say, I can't make it, or they don't make it every week, or, you know, it's like, I call it like the dog's chewed my homework type of excuses. They will often turn it on the people that are running the group. And what's often forgotten is you've been invited, but you chose to be there.
Do your 50%.
Yeah. So it's nobody's dragged you through the door. You've said, I'm willing to commit.
I mean, what do you think happens? So talking about the energy side, because we're very big on the energy. So when you've got people missing groups, what happens to the energy of that space?
It's like a missing link of a chain, I think, because what you're building on, it's not only about the spirit world, but it's our energies as they join together. That's why some of the most important work in Circle might be done over a cup of tea when you're chatting after about certain experiences in a week, and you're actually bonding together. And then the closer that bond gets, the more constructive the energy in the circle will be as you face obstacles together. That's why it's important. Yeah, you can't bring everything in that's going on in your life, but there may be something that's going on, and then other people in the circle will go, yeah, that's happened this week, and go, I felt that.
Yeah.
And that'll bring you even closer. It's not all about holding hands and dancing. Sometimes it's like, it might be a tough week energetically, but you come together. That is one of the big strengths of a circle, coming together. And if somebody misses, it is like a link in a chain.
The same with classes, same with development groups.
And you can miss a lot. I've seen it particularly with development groups, where what will happen is somebody misses, but when that person comes back the next week, then you're going backwards. You can't move forward as a group because you're catching up. So that's another subject, really, but that could be.
But then even down to just going back there, even I think if anybody's watching this podcast and they're looking to join a group or join a circle, you know, we've just recently posted, we're starting a healing group, and, you know, openly say there's people there, well, can I join just for 3 weeks and miss the other 3 weeks? Well, no. And a few people said, well, that's a bit harsh, Steve. And no, you if you want to commit to something, you've got to come to those 6 weeks. And we know through personal experience, sometimes that can be frustrating, but that dedication is key. We know that because we've experienced that ourselves.
I think as well as it's saying, you know, we're going to, and this probably counts for anybody, and most people who run courses or any sort of teaching area or circles, what you're actually saying is, you're putting that call out there and saying, look, I will be there. I will be giving it my absolute all.
Absolutely.
All my energy, all my input, every bit of experience and knowledge that I hold. I'll be there every week. All that I expect is, please do the same. Do your part.
Absolutely.
So it's like anything, really. You're entering an agreement, aren't you? It's like a bit of a contract. And the more, in my experience, the more you commit to something, the more you're going to get out of it. The more you're willing to put in. That's an old saying, that. And the more you put in, the more you're going to get out.
I think it's for me personally, this is such a valued subject, because anybody who wants to develop healing mediumistically, courses, classes, circles, dedication is the stepping stone of your inner development. But I just want to turn the subject on a different angle on healing. So we run the Health and Wellbeing Clinic, aside from the Purple Mountain, which is we do healing treatments. Now, and people come in and they'll book a healing treatment, and we do healing very differently here at the Purple Mountain, don't we? Because we work primarily about energy. So we're talking about deep healing on self. So people come to have a healing treatment, and we recommend to continue the healing plan, and then you don't see them again. So why do you think that happens?
Well, to be fair, I think, in fairness to all concerned, I think we've learned a lot through offering healing over the last 10, 12 years, however long it's been. In terms of maybe at times, I'll admit it, maybe in the beginning without knowing, I'd think, is this a one and done in a way? But I think we're living in a time where somebody actually asked me the other day, who came for a healing treatment here for the first time at the Purple Mountain. They said, what would you recommend next? And I said, well, take a look, see what you're drawn to. But what I recommend is don't leave it, follow it up.
Well, why is that important? Why is the follow-up important?
I think it's important if you want to really get to the heart of the matter with things. I think, again, it comes back to that saying from before, you're only going to get out of something as much as you're willing to put in. So if you're going to come, and we see this pattern, you know, in the world probably a little bit, is I'll get myself into this place, right? I'm really struggling, I'm panic, I'm all these things going on. Right, I'll come for the healing treatment. Oh, I felt so much better after, felt so much more relaxed, clarity. And then you don't see that person for 6 months, come back, they're in the same situation.
Same state again.
And something that I've recognized lately is, even when we're making, when people are trying to book in healing treatments, it comes so far down the ladder. And I think your health and well-being, if it's important, it's got to be brought into your timetable in a better way of saying, look, it can't come after 6 different things. You know, otherwise you're going to fail. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it comes down to your intention. I think I can understand looking at it from both as a healer, somebody that holds space, but also from me being Stephen and me going out in the world. I know what I'm like in my personality. Life gets in the way. I make stupid excuses for myself. You do it. Oh, I'm too busy. I've got other stuff coming up. Family matters. So you put your health, for some reason we do this, we put health and well-being to one side. But like you said, it chases up after you. You can't, human beings are so good at bypassing and avoiding what's really needed. And I think a lot of people are, very bluntly, do surface work, which is plastering on something, coming back 6 months, and let's plaster that on again. And I think everything seems to be speeding up in the energetic field and the collective consciousness. Lessons that might have took 5 years to come around, it's coming around every week, every month now. So none of us can avoid it. Things are coming up. Healing, I think, coming for a healing treatment is not always what people need.
Well, I was going to ask you, if you don't mind interrupting, is the other side of it, where people come too often.
Well,
what's your thoughts on that?
Well, people come too often, but that comes down to clients teaching healers a lesson, because I fell into this and put my hand up. Come for another reading. 3 months later, another reading. And it's a kind of, I would say, kind of abuse on your gift, on your energies. But you're facilitating that. That's not the client's fault. That's you. So we've come to learn a lot about energetic boundaries, me and you, where we actually say, this doesn't feel right. And number one, being brutally honest to the client is exactly what they need. Is maybe that's the role we've come back to play, to actually say, look, guys, you don't need another healing. And the point I was making before, which is all related, is you don't need more healing, because what state are you in when you always say, I need healing? You're saying you're not well. So that can be a trap. Healing can be a trap. But ultimately, you know, I call it living the practice. Things that I do at home, which is, you know, if I sat at home all day indoors, I get depressed. I go for a walk. I drink plenty of water. I eat a good diet. I eat fats and meats. I exercise 3-4 times a week. So I have an active plan that I've conditioned myself, and I'm sure you've got your own things that you do, called what we call living the practice. So healing's not always come for a healing treatment. Be active, be proactive. And how do you feel if you sit there all day?
I think it's just making them, I call it like my toolbox. So you build up like a toolbox of different practices, things you enjoy, and just along the way, you know, you go to them as you need them, and really simply, because you hear it quite often, I'm feeling a certain way. I said, well, what about this? Oh no, I can't do that. And it's like, well, the way it's working at the minute isn't working for you. I've had to ask myself that a few times. Were you feeling this way, Chris, again? So the way you're dealing, or what you're doing isn't serving you. So what have you got to lose to maybe changing that a little bit? And change sometimes, once you decide on change, it's progressive. You take little baby steps, but try something different, you know, go for a walk. It doesn't have to be far. You know, if you're struggling a bit, you know, even walking to the shop and back in the morning, you know, I watched something the other day where somebody said, get up and make your bed. That's the first job of the day. And I thought, yeah, it makes sense. It's you're giving yourself a little bit of that structure. And if you're feeling a certain way or stagnant, do something, because it's only going to make things better, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think I don't like to speak to everybody, but I suppose things can get stagnant very quickly for anyone. It's like if it's left.
I agree. And I think just going deep into the conversation, I think when it comes to commitment and dedication, the number one question I tend to ask clients now, particularly if people do want to do deeper work, like I said, we've got treatments that are surface, sound healing crystals, powerful treatments. But when people come and they've got deep trauma, or we have to sometimes delve a little bit deeper, auric cleanses, Kambo, some of the deeper work, the abdominal breath work, the Osho dynamic breath work. So lots of powerful, deeper healing work.
Yeah, it's not one road for everybody, is it? I mean, for example,
not one key fits every hole, is it?
Deeper healing work could be cupping, for example, in delving into relaxing the nervous system, which is huge at the minute. It's not one road for everyone, but it's like it comes back to curiosity a bit, ask those questions, and most people know the outcome they want. It's just how to get there. And maybe that's where practitioners come in with that guidance. But then again, it's up to you, because we mentioned with Circle, it's commitment, isn't it? Do you want to commit yourself to it?
That's why I think I think the level of work you've done on yourself, and I'm not coming from an egotistical perspective, just on bluntly the reality side of it, is that I know that, part of that dedication is, and we'll talk about mirror work in a minute, when we dedicate ourselves to something, we've got to ask ourselves and look in that mirror. Number one, do I need healing?
Yeah.
Do I want to be healed? That's the question I ask my clients. I say to my clients when we do deeper work, let's open up here. Do you want to be healed? And people are taken back by me asking that question, because that's a question we have to ask ourselves. Are we ready to be healed? Are you ready to let go of that trauma, that identity, those false belief systems, those illusions? Like you've just talked about my little box. We've all got a little box here. Yeah. We like to be nice and comfortable, but a lot of the stuff we offer here at the Purple Mountain is to get you uncomfortable, aren't we? Really?
We work a lot with cacao. We have done for many years now.
That's an amazing analogy.
And so many times we hear it and we go, and I know you come up with a good answer for this. And people go, because it's different. They go, oh no, I've heard about that. And your answer is, well, if you can drink coffee, you'll be fine. If you can have 10 cups of coffee a day, 1 cup of cacao will be absolutely fine. And again, there's other things like movement, dancing. Quite often in our cacao ceremonies, people will come on their own and they'll be a bit nervous by the end. They've just let go. So, we talk about feelings, what feel right, what doesn't, but there's another angle to this, resisting. So sometimes there can be something change and we can resist change because it's bringing up an emotion, a feeling in us. And actually there's something really good on the other side of it. My answer to that with anybody is, the advice that I give myself is, what have you got to lose? What have you got to lose? You go, and what if you don't like it? Well, you've learned something.
But what do I say when people come for treatments, when we do shamanic nights, or when people are scared of hape or they're scared of the sananga? And I say, well, you brought yourself, have the full experience. Obviously subconsciously they've brought themselves there. But often I find as well, people don't read things. They go in things. I don't like using this expression, but it's the only expression I can, coming in willy-nilly with things.
Yeah. But do you think that's sometimes a mirror of something I've talked about a lot, is we're living in a time of great abundance. Even since 2020, there's so much of this work about, which is amazing to see in many ways. But do you not think sometimes it can water things down a bit? So that approach is perhaps mirroring the approach that is happening sometimes. We've seen it with sound baths, for example, where there's an explosion with them. And there's not always the energetic or the understanding of the energy you're working with. It's just or come and it's relaxation, and then people have certain emotions or feelings go up in sound baths. You know, sounds very powerful.
It is, and I think there's different sort of takes to that with the sound healing side. The courses that we do here at the Purple Mountain, something that I'm really passionate about, which is not just about picking up a sound bowl and playing it, is you're learning how to be a master of energy. And I know you're not keen on the word master, but you're mastering a skill. You're mastering a skill which is about holding energy, working with energy, and if you know how to do that. But then on the other perspective as well, while there is a huge saturation, I'm all for the promotion of spiritual work, but I find this, which might be quite controversial actually, is that
controversial
is that a lot of people get into any form of spiritual work. Really, there's a distortion there, because I find that a lot of people have come to do the inner work, and then they end up holding space, working with sound, being a medium, when they've not done that level of work on themselves. So they rush the process of development.
Well, I think that's
a way to avoid. And sometimes people, very bluntly, some people aren't meant to work with spiritual work. Well, they're meant to do the inner work.
Yeah, it's the thing at the minute, isn't it? Because there's this great abundance again. And if you're drawn to something, then, you know, perhaps it's for you and not to facilitate. But I wonder this, like, again, it's great when people share knowledge and teachings and you can learn these things, but does it take away a little bit from the natural where you would be drawn and it would just happen?
You make a really good point.
You know, it's all good questions to ask, good conversations. I'm not saying one way or another. I don't know. It's just thoughts I'm having. It's good, those people who can share their wisdom and knowledge. But also, is everybody meant to be doing certain types of work? And the other thing is, are they doing it because they feel it's a purpose, or they're doing it because everyone else does it?
And it's making lots of money for them.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. And that's something that we're not here to judge people
for. Well, either way, it's not about vilifying any of them people. What we're asking is, and this is a good question for anybody to ask, is this my heart's calling?
For me, it comes to your intention, and I know in my own experience, I've done things at the Purple Mountain thinking, oh, this is going to bring a little bit of extra money, you know, and then very soon it fizzles out because it wasn't for my true intention. It was not my calling. One of my big divine callings is working with doing one-to-one readings. Yeah. We've all got our own, and I think.
So, what's an example? Put you on the spot of something that you thought would be good, and you found it isn't your calling, or over time you've discovered, it's not actually part of my heart's calling, divine purpose, whatever you want to call it. Is there anything been like that?
I have to say, and I've not really thought about it. One of them, and I'll give you a good example, was Kambo.
Yeah,
was that I did Kambo practitioner's course about 4 or 5 years ago, which I knew at the time I felt that was my calling. But looking back now, I'm so thankful that I learned about Kambo. But what I learned with Kambo, which was a lot about holding space, about energy, smudging, things like that I use a lot of those teachings with my other work. I think what Kambo did, which was help shift a lot of distortions, illusions within me, where I might have got lost in that thinking, I'm going to be a Kambo practitioner, when
I think you make a really good point there.
When really I was acting from a client's perspective rather than, I can do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you added another part to what I said earlier about courses there, saying actually there's another part to this. If you do a course, maybe it's not your divine calling to be facilitating whatever it is, sound, Kambo, but maybe it's part of your initiation or self-healing, that you're meant to be there. You're going to meet somebody, you're going to, for reasons unknown, it might be part of your, because I felt very much similar with Kambo. We had a little bit different training, in the sense physically different, because I went and stayed somewhere, and it's really what I needed at that point in my life. It really assisted me so much in that growth period, we'll call it. So I think that's a better way to put it, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
In this, when you enter a course, it's good to ask yourself after, is it for me to facilitate, or was that for my self-development?
That what you've just said there was something that everybody should ask themselves, because what can healing be? It can be a trap. Healing's spirituality is one of the biggest traps, because when we trap ourselves with spirituality, we avoid the deeper work, the shadow work, the deeper trauma work on ourselves.
And as you well know, which is another part what we can fall into with healing, because actually I feel like healing is more, well, I don't want to say it's more prone to ego, but it definitely is, in the sense of you may hear, well, I've done this, well, I've done that. And it was actually a guy who, I like to watch him, although he can be a bit brash. I like his knowledge, his Bashir, when it's channeled. And he said, what you're actually doing is you're stably holding that frequency of unconditional love, that vibration. You're able to stably hold it. That's why, as a healer, the best work is you can do in yourself, balancing your nervous system and your energies. So actually, during any sort of healing session, you're not becoming triggered. You're able to hold that frequency for someone else so they can do their own self-healing.
I agree. And then looking at it from the different perspective is, well, we look as a business, you're looking at something that's holding space, and where there can be a lot of jealousy in the movement. And at the end of the day, regardless of what people's beliefs are, subconsciously we're all spirit. People will be drawn to certain healers because they have done that level of work, that level of initiation, both on the personal and on the energetic.
And plus there's people for people. One of my sayings, I've said it for years, there are people for people. We've just seen it here at the moment. You're about to go on your holidays, and my mum's coming in to do some healing treatments, and there's been clients we've not seen for a while that are wanting to come see my mum, and that's because they are drawn to her frequency. There's a resonance there that they're very,
and that's not right or wrong. No. If people resonate,
and we've seen this in readings, because we don't have any sort of ego that way when we say, would you like a reading with Stephen or myself? Because we know it's people for people. We can actually spot our clients almost when they're coming in going, that's a Stephen one, that's a Chris one. It's because it's like a radio frequency, what you're emitting. So actually, sometimes on the other side, people who might struggle with clients, maybe the clients come to teach them something. They're playing a role. Everybody's playing a role, aren't they?
I agree. So,
right,
just
get us back on track.
Get back on track a little bit, and let's talk a little bit about spiritual tourists. Well, the first time I heard this was actually through you.
Yeah,
just tell me a little bit about when you came across the word spiritual tourist.
Well, it was when I was on my Campbell training with Austin, and he mentioned this in Campbell, and in the terms of intention, what do you want this for? And the phrase to watch out for is, well, I'm just looking for an experience. I just thought I'd experience it, and there's nothing behind that. It's and you got to have an intention coming in. Something I actually ask quite a few of my clients with healing is, how would you like to walk out of here today? How do you envisage yourself walking out? Even if that's, well, I just feel a lot clear-minded, or that, I'm feeling more clarity or whatever. Or
that's where intention's important, isn't it?
So I think it's the intention, and are we picking something? Because we see this a lot, is where somebody, say, it could be anything, you go for Campbell. So you've gone and had this Campbell treatment, and you come back and you're feeling amazing. And I go, oh, look at what that's done for Stephen. I'll have the same. And we've loads of people done this. It happens with readings, and I've probably done it, and you've probably done it. But it's a good one to observe, where actually what we should be asking is, oh, wonderful for Stephen, is this right for me? Because you'll see people, and they might bring their friend and that's with anything, and the friend might not get the same out of it because it wasn't initially something they were drawn to.
Well, the recommendation is something something we can talk about because we've experienced it ourselves. I mean, we do so much here at the Purple Mountain. It took us a long time to actually, open up our hearts to go to other places.
Yeah.
And I like to go to certain people that do treatments, readings that I resonate with, that don't know me that well. But also what's happened in the past is that we've recommended, and then people have gone and they felt disappointed.
Yes, they've
gone disappointed. And I've experienced this actually with people that have come to see me in readings, And I try to say to people in readings, look, and, you know, I say, you know, is this your first reading? Well, I've been recommended. But just to let you know, every reading's different. And people expect, even when there is brothers and sisters that come for readings, and they automatically expect the mum's going to come through. And sometimes nothing's ever guaranteed. You know, there is these I always like to go into things with no expectations, but with intention.
Well, it's I always ask, you know, what's needed for the very highest good of that person, and it's different for every individual. And again, not about that need, not about what you want, but what's needed. You know, and we've seen it in readings where it may be that direct evidence and communication with a loved one in the spirit world, maybe more on the physical side, a bit of that soul guidance. And that time as well. But it's a really good point to hit on that. Now, it can happen, of course, it can happen where a friend might go and you'll go, yeah, that's for me, and it's great. But just ask yourself, if a friend of yours has been to a practitioner or had an experience, remember your experience might not be the same.
Yeah.
So it's important just to ask yourself, is this going to be for me? Or look into it, or ring the person up that's done it and have a chat with them. You know, I know for a fact we don't mind people calling us and asking questions about treatments and saying, you know, do you think this would be suitable? And we'll be very honest, you know. I
try to, when I speak to clients, is to mirror out, because a lot of people don't know who they are. And it's a sort of a trait that I don't like to go into really as a healer, to tell people what they need, but rather mirror and ask the right questions. Because at the end of the day, you know, if you speak to somebody now, and just by sitting and they trust you and that they're in a non-judgmental space, and you ask them, where is your pain? They will move the hand unconsciously to parts of the body where there is pain. So the body does know. It's the mind that will say, oh, I don't know, you tell me. And that can be very frustrating sometimes. And sometimes our job as healers, which we'll go into later on, is to actually say to people, healing's not what you need. You just need to ground. You need to spend more time in nature. You just need to do a bit of that inner work.
This would be a good time to, because I'll just glance down on you, the itinerary. It's learning to say no.
Well, that's something that I've had to relearn personally from my personal experience the past 2-3 years, and something that I actually want to talk about experiences where somebody said no to happy to me.
Right.
And where actually somebody said, Stephen, you don't need happy, you just need to be. And I needed to hear that. and somebody that is a massive advocate of happy, massive advocate of Kambo and sound and meditation, is sometimes we've got to, you know, work on ourselves, even as healers. This is something that people think, once you're a medium, once you're a healer, that is it. Development is a continuation. You're constantly unfolding the inner lotus flower. You're constantly doing that inner work, aren't you? And I think saying no now as a healer is something that sometimes, it feels uncomfortable. Shoot. I don't like saying no. I know you're a little bit more, the Aquarius side, which is you're a little bit more that says you've got stronger. Capricorn's like to
maybe so.
Go around a lot of things.
We've all been there. I think it comes.
What do you think?
Well, it's a little bit like, in a way, you want to see people happy. But what I've found over the years of saying no is actually takes more to say no than yes. Yes is very easy. And I think sometimes being truthful and honest with people, and that can actually trigger a lot of people by saying that. But, you know, it's important because you're being truthful. We're working with truth here. The only way is up and through. It takes a lot of challenges sometimes to say, it can be very challenging to say no. But also what you were talking about there, whether a healer, a medium, whatever you want to call yourself, it's almost like a test where people can put you on a pedestal. So it's important that we keep things real. You know, we're still going through stuff. We're learning about ourselves every day. We have the exact same obstacles you are. We're living in the same blooming world you are. Do you know what I mean? It's we know how things can be. We know the footfalls. We've all got families. We've all got situations. So it's important. And what I've found from my perspective is, if you do place that person on a pedestal and you are doing it, not them, very quickly they'll take themselves off it in some way. They'll show some action to say, look, I'm just like you.
Yeah.
which is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think learning to let clients go is a big one as well. Learning, and sometimes looking at it from the other perspective, when you got people that will start a group, then you don't see them, and sometimes you won't see them again for a year. Is learning it to accept that and don't take that personal. And years and years and years ago, we used to say, "Why is this happening?" And actually, learning now, it's not where they're meant to be. The universe is saying them, their consciousness is saying it's not where they need to be.
Yeah,
you know, they have to resonate with the same place.
And I think sometimes it's good to, because I found this, you know, when having any sort of healing work done that way is it's a little bit like the toolbox we mentioned earlier. You know, the same thing over and over again isn't always the way. You'd be drawn to different people, different practices all the time, and you can weigh things out a little bit, almost where you're expecting the same outcome every time, and it can wear a bit thin. And it's where, you know, maybe you've done and that practitioner's done what they're meant to do with you. It's time to move on.
Yeah.
You're ready for another approach, or maybe ready for a bit of a break, integration, which is another subject altogether. We won't get into that at the moment. But I think that's really important. And you know, all this that we've talked about comes down to some key words, really, is, you know, curiosity and dedication. That dedication, whether you've got children, or it's just your partner or your friends, or it's just you,
or
it's
work.
The same for everyone. Everybody's got something that they can, it's about prioritizing things. And that's almost like the first step of, if you want to call it an awakening, is actually to say, no, you know, this is something I'm really called to. I'm going to do it because, you know, it's needed as well. And if anybody's made a decision, I'm sure a lot of listeners, people listening to it, found themselves with hit the bottom of the barrel, and then they've gone. Now, what was the instinct that come? And for me, I know what it comes is, I've got to do something now, and it becomes very quickly number one priority, and it should be number one all the time.
For talk from my personal experience, is that I've had to be you have to be really resilient and really strong inside to say, actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that today. I've got commitments. I'm doing spiritual work today, and actually learning to say no is the most important thing. But the question that I always ask myself as somebody that's going for healing, going for reading, I always ask myself this question: why am I having this today? And when you ask yourself that, you're creating intention. You talk about curiosity, being curious. Why am I having this? Do I need this?
Yeah, it's not happening. Not allowing ourselves to fall into being the victim and saying, oh my God, this is happening. Everything's trying to stop me. It's like, well, why is it? Why is this being brought to me? What's the lesson? Self-responsibility. You know, we have a choice. We can choose.
So just as we come in a little bit to the end of the conversation, and I like to, something that I'm a massive advocate to. So if anybody that wants to develop spiritually, that want to do any courses, classes, for me, I would be a massive advocate to home circles.
Yeah.
Because for me, development circles, awareness classes don't generally work, because the 6 weeks, 8 weeks, well, how long is development? How long is a piece of string? We sat, I think, for 7 years before Anita passed away, when the circle started changing and I developed more in trance, and then the physical came in with you before we were even mediums. We were doing that work before. We were learning just to sit in meditation, sit in the presence. And I think that is, don't have any expectation, just be yourself, learn about yourself.
Yeah.
Sit, be you, sit in the energy, learn about energy, learn about light and dark, learn about meditation, learn about breath work, sit, ask questions, be curious. And that's where home circles, a good home circle, is key part to any development. So what's
I would have a slightly different slant.
You're not disagreeing with me.
Slightly.
You can't have that.
Where I agree with you. And somebody actually messaged me the other day talking about trance development and said, oh, do you teach? And I said, my advice is, if you're feeling what you're feeling and all this, get some like-minded people together that you trust, you resonate with, that you have even strong friendships with, sit in a circle. Get a home circle going. Even if there's just 2 other people, you sit there in dedicate yourselves. And this is something anyone can create. But I do also feel that we want to call them classes or courses, when committed to in the right situation, can be incredibly helpful as well. They can add another string to your bow. My thoughts are, what I've learned is, in this work, always go into things with a little bit of, you're the student. You're always the student in a way. You're always learning. So I think you can do courses that you're drawn to if you're willing to dedicate yourself, and the parties running it are dedicating themselves. I think you can get a lot out of them, but it's not a one and done. That's where it gets muddled up, particularly in mediumship, where you're not going to do a weekend course and all of a sudden it takes time. And I think maybe that's what you were trying to put across, is it can't be just done like that. It takes that dedication over years and sitting, and you're going to learn so much in that time, and it'll be a huge help. Because how many people, I'll drop this in, end up quitting this work? And that grounding that you'll get in, whether it's a home circle or being around like-minded people, get that grounding behind you, because it'll be very helpful when the knocks come.
It comes down to, very simply, again, is it a calling? It's being curious and asking yourself, is this something that I want to do, and why am I doing this? And again, if you're doing it not for the right reasons, it will all fall apart. And lastly, you can't force or quicken the development of the inner gift.
No.
It takes time. And then also I think there's a lot of things, we're not even delved into this in today's conversation, even as for mystery schools, other wellbeing organizations that simply qualify people really quickly on things, has a detriment to the movement as well. It takes years of that inner work, years of self-development. I think we have to be very cautious not to force or quicken people's development.
Well, you made a really good point about a few things the other day. When courses are offered, particularly when they're on very, very in-depth subjects, that there should be something where people gather together monthly, and it becomes a few years worth. Because I'm not going to name some of the practices, but you look into any practice, you look into the history of it, it's years and years, not a weekend. And it's really important that, that's not said with judgment, but I kind of feel it's very much the Western way a little bit.
I agree.
We bring ancient practices and we want to quicken them, when actually when we quicken them, what happens is we don't have that grounding behind us, and very quickly at the first hurdle we're going to fall. And then what do we fall back on? We're really fortunate, me and you, because many, many times that time I've spent in a home circle, even now, I will go back to some of those core teachings. When I'm feeling, I'll go, just go back to what you know. And it's so helpful, and it actually stops me from crumbling at some point. It keeps me steady. And so put the time in, dedicate yourself. It'll pay off years down the line. And the other thing is, just want to finish with, is can't get in the way of what's meant to be. It'll find you.
If it is your calling.
Yeah.
And that's why when we sat in a home circle, and I understand that now, when we sat there, talk about trance, I developed a trance. I say I didn't force it. Spirit saw something in me. It was a natural. I developed when the time was right. And you see, and it might be controversial for saying this, but that's why I think what's happened with Reiki. Reiki's been watered down.
Yeah.
So it's been a really interesting conversation, Craig.
Yeah. And so hopefully, well, I'm sure there will be those listeners who receive this information. Let us know your thoughts as well in the comments.
Like and subscribe our page. Thank you.
Please like and subscribe. Take a look on our website. Have your opinion. Maybe let us know some of the subjects you'd like us to touch on as well, and we can go for that as well.
And we're looking for real, authentic conversations, talking about things other people aren't. So thank you very much for listening, guys.
Amazing.